The hybrid tactical vehicles hummed to a stop on the ridge, their electric silence an unsettling contrast to the vast, screaming emptiness of the Serpent's jaw pass. The sun, a merciless white disk in the Caucasian sky, baked the rust-colored rocks until the air above them shimmered, distorting the world into a watery illusion. A dry wind, smelling of sagebrush and ozone, snaked through the canyon, carrying whispers that died before they could be understood. Master Chief Cade Wreckage Sullivan stepped out, his boots crunching on loose shale. His movements were economical, honed by 2 decades of making life-or-death decisions in the world's forgotten hellholes. His SEAL team fanned out with the fluid, unspoken coordination of a wolf pack, their eyes scanning the jagged peaks and shadowed crevices. They were apex predators in their element, which made the woman standing by the lead vehicle all the more incongruous. Dr. Eris Thorne adjusted the anti-glare glasses on her nose. She wore functional but decidedly civilian outdoor gear, her auburn hair pulled back in a tight, practical bun. In one hand, she held a sophisticated environmental data collector, its screen displaying fluctuating atmospheric pressure and thermal readings. To the SEALs, she looked like a lost university professor on a field trip. "Got what you need, Doc?" Wreckage asked, his tone professionally neutral but laced with an undercurrent of impatience. Headquarters had insisted on her presence, something about anomalous atmospheric conditions affecting surveillance drones. To him, it was just another layer of bureaucratic nonsense. "Almost," Eris replied, her gaze fixed on the far side of the pass. She wasn't looking at potential enemy positions. She was watching the light itself bend and twist around the rocks. Petty Officer Rico Santos trudged past, muttering to his squad, "Mate, just loud enough to be heard. Great. They sent a weather girl to watch us work." Eris gave no sign she heard him. Her focus was absolute. She raised the data collector, pointing it at a distant rock formation. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself. "The katabatic wind shear is creating a localized atmospheric lens." She spoke the words like a connoisseur tasting a rare wine, completely absorbed in a world the hardened soldiers around her couldn't see or comprehend. They saw a kill zone. She saw a physics problem. And that was a distinction that was about to matter more than anyone could possibly imagine. The first sign of the enemy appeared at 9:20, not as a clumsy patrol, but as 5 disciplined figures materializing from the shimmering heat haze, moving with a confidence that screamed professional. They carried advanced weaponry, and their spacing was textbook perfect. "Hostiles range 750, came the calm voice of Ghost, the team's spotter. Beside him, Viper, a sniper so legendary he was practically a myth in the special operations community, settled behind his state-of-the-art rifle. The rifle's onboard computer, fed by a laser rangefinder and a LiDAR wind scanner, displayed a perfect firing solution. Sending it, Viper breathed, and the rifle cracked a single, sharp report that was swallowed by the canyon. The bullet, a custom-loaded .338 Lapua Magnum, should have struck the lead fighter dead center. Instead, it kicked up a cloud of dust a full 10 feet to his left. "What the hell?" Ghost hissed, rechecking his data. "Readings are solid. No wind change." Viper, his composure uncracked, cycled the bolt and fired again. This time, the round sparked off a rock 15 feet above the target's head. The enemy fighters didn't even flinch. They simply melted back into the landscape with unnerving calm. It was as if they knew they were untouchable. From another position, the team's second sniper tried, with the same bizarre results. Bullets veered off course, as if deflected by an invisible shield. The SEAL's multi-million-dollar technology was failing them completely. Frustration began to curdle the air. That's when Eris spoke, her voice steady and clear over the comms. "You're not shooting at them. You're shooting at a Fata Morgana effect, amplified by an anabatic wind shear. The air is folding the light. Your targets are approximately 3 mils lower and 2 mils to the right of their optical illusion." The comms channel went silent for a beat. Then Viper's voice, tight with fury, cut through. "We don't need a goddamn physics lecture, Doc. We need to put rounds on target." As if on cue, the trap was sprung. The distinct thump of a mortar tube echoed from a hidden position, and a second later, a shell screamed down, exploding precisely where the team had been standing just moments before. They had been watching, waiting for the SEALs to reveal their positions. Now, the hunt had begun, and the predators had become the prey. The ambush was a masterpiece of tactical sadism. Mortar rounds walked across their ridge with chilling precision, forcing the SEALs to scramble from cover to cover. The enemy shooters, now firing from multiple concealed positions, laid down a withering crossfire. Rock chips and shrapnel filled the air. Within minutes, 2 SEALs were hit, and Wreckage knew his team was caught in a scientifically designed kill box. The enemy wasn't just using the terrain, they were weaponizing the very air around them. Panic was a luxury they couldn't afford, but the cold tendrils of dread were beginning to grip them. Their technology was useless, their instincts were betraying them, and they were bleeding out on a sun-scorched rock, completely outmaneuvered. In the midst of this controlled chaos, Eris Thorne moved with an eerie calm. She set her data collector down with the delicate precision of a surgeon placing a scalpel. Then, she knelt beside a hardened case that the team had assumed held geological survey equipment. She unlatched it. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was not a rock hammer or a soil sampler. It was a heavily modified state Route 25 DMR. Its matte black finish absorbed the light, and its custom-built optic looked more like a piece of observatory equipment than a rifle scope. An integrated suppressor gave it a sleek, predatory silhouette. "Doc, what the hell is that?" Wreckage yelled over the din of an exploding mortar. "You are not authorized to carry that weapon." Eris didn't look at him. She was already loading a magazine of what he could see were not standard issue rounds. Her movements were fluid, economical, and terrifyingly familiar. It was the muscle memory of a master craftsman. "Their authorization," she said, her voice dropping to a flat, cold tone as she chambered around, "is irrelevant to our survival." She settled into a firing position, ignoring the chaos. She didn't consult a rangefinder or a wind meter. She simply watched the shimmering air for a few seconds, her head tilted as if listening to a silent song. Her scope made 2 tiny, audible clicks of adjustment. Then she fired. The sound was a dull, heavy cough, barely noticeable in the firefight. But 800 meters away, an enemy machine gunner who had been pinning down half the team suddenly pitched backward, a dark hole appearing in his chest. The entire battlefield seemed to hold its breath for a single, stunned second. The single shot changed the equation of the battle. It wasn't just a kill, it was a statement. Where the SEAL's best had failed, the quiet academic had succeeded with impossible ease. Eris worked the bolt with practiced efficiency, her eyes already scanning for the next problem to solve. She wasn't hunting men. She was solving a series of complex physics equations. She fired again, the suppressed report a soft punctuation mark in the ongoing firefight. A mortar spotter concealed in a nest of rocks and distorted light, crumpled without a sound. She had calculated his true position by observing the micro-distortions his body heat created in the air currents. The SEALs watched, mesmerized. Wreckage started calling out targets, but his role had fundamentally changed. He was no longer a commander. He was a spotter for a force he didn't understand. "RPG team, east flank, behind the overhang," he yelled. "Acquired," Eris replied calmly. She waited a beat, then another. Just as the enemy soldier hoisted the launcher to his shoulder, she fired. The round didn't hit the man. It struck the warhead of the rocket itself. The resulting detonation was catastrophic, vaporizing the RPG team and sending a shockwave across the valley. Seeing their tactical advantage evaporate, the enemy commander played his trump card. A small, canister-like object was thrown, and it detonated not with a bang, but with a silent pulse of energy. A portable EMP. Every electronic sight on the SEALs' rifles went dead, replaced by a screen of useless static. Their comms fizzled into white noise. They were blind. "EMP. All optics are down," Rico shouted, his voice tight with panic. But Eris's custom scope remained crystal clear. It was a purely mechanical and optical marvel, shielded against such attacks. In the moment the SEALs were technologically castrated, her true superiority was revealed. While they struggled to aim with iron sights through the shimmering air, she entered a state of lethal flow. Cough! An enemy sniper disappeared from his perch. Cough! A flanking element was cut down mid-stride. She tracked the enemy commander not by sight, but by inference. He was using a laser designator to direct his remaining forces. To the naked eye, it was invisible. To Eris's optic, the laser created a faint, almost imperceptible column of energized particles in the dusty air. It was a beacon pointing directly to its source. She adjusted for the refraction, accounted for the wind, and gently squeezed the trigger. The enemy's command and control structure ceased to exist. With their commander gone, the remaining enemy fighters began to panic. Their disciplined fire devolved into sporadic, desperate bursts. The tide had turned, but Eris, scanning the now chaotic battlefield, saw one last, critical threat that the others had missed. Hidden in a deep crevice, a two-man team was frantically assembling a weapon that made her blood run cold. A man-portable electromagnetic railgun. It was experimental, terrifyingly powerful, and more than capable of punching through the armor of their incoming evac helicopter. She didn't wait for orders. She didn't announce her intentions. She simply broke cover. "Thorn, what are you doing?" "Get back!" Wreckage roared, but she was already gone, flowing down the treacherous slope with the grace of a mountain cat. She moved from one piece of cover to the next, never in a straight line, her path a masterclass in tactical movement. The remaining enemy fire intensified, all of it converging on her. "Cover her!" Wreckage bellowed, and the SEALs, snapping out of their awe, responded with a furious volley of suppressive fire. They might not understand who or what she was, but she was one of them now. Eris reached a cluster of boulders and transitioned to her sidearm in a single, fluid motion. A fighter who had tried to flank her appeared from behind a rock, and she put 2 rounds in his chest before he could even raise his rifle. She moved again, closing the distance to the railgun. A burst of automatic fire kicked up dirt at her feet, forcing her behind a narrow spine of rock. Pinned. Instead of waiting, she pulled a flashbang grenade from her vest. The throw was perfect, an arc that landed it directly in the enemy's nest. The resulting blast was followed by screams of disorientation. Eris exploded from cover, pistol leading the way. But one fighter, shielded from the blast, rose from a spider hole less than 10 feet away, his rifle already swinging towards her. At that range, there should have been no time to react. She didn't react. She anticipated. As he rose, she was already dropping, throwing herself sideways in a move that defied gravity. Her pistol came up as she fell. 3 shots, fired from an unstable, impossible position. All 3 found center mass. The final threat collapsed back into his hole, and the Serpent's jaw fell utterly silent. The flight back to base was thick with a silence that had nothing to do with engine noise. The wounded were stable, the mission was a success, but every man on that helicopter was re-evaluating his understanding of the world. They stared at the quiet woman in the corner, who was methodically cleaning her rifle as if she'd just returned from a day at the range. Finally, Wreckage walked over, kneeling in the aisle. "Eris," he began, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance, filled only with a profound, unsettling awe. "I have to ask, what are you?" She looked up from her work, her gray eyes holding his. They were calm, ancient eyes. "I'm the person they call when physics becomes a weapon." Rico, his arm in a sling, leaned in. "What unit?" "I've never heard of anything like." A small, sad smile touched Eris's lips. "We're contingency. A rounding error in a budget report. Until we're not." The finality in her tone ended the questions. As they prepared to land, Viper, the sniper whose pride had been so thoroughly shattered, walked over. He held out a single, spent casing from her rifle. It was made of a strange, tungsten alloy he didn't recognize. He offered it to her. "Keep it," she said softly, not taking it. A reminder that sometimes you have to change the rules to win the game. She shouldered her gear and walked off the helicopter, disappearing into the base's administrative labyrinth without a backward glance. Wreckage watched her go, then looked at the remaining members of his team. Their faces held a new kind of understanding, a new kind of humility. They had been saved by a ghost, a variable that their tactical manuals could never account for. They had walked into a trap, and a force of nature had walked out. Have you ever completely underestimated someone, only to be proven profoundly wrong? What would have gone through your mind watching a scientist outshoot the world's most elite snipers? Drop your thoughts below. We value every perspective. Comment with respect for the quiet professionals who walk among us. If this story reminds you that the most dangerous weapon is often a brilliant mind, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge your assumptions. Share this with someone who understands that the deadliest threats are the ones you never see coming.